share.
All right, we are live.
Excellent.
Hey there, I'm Diana Martinez Alexander, and I'm joined by the always amazing Michelle Palmer.
We are two educators who want to make sure that people are aware of what's going on in the world. And we have been doing a series of presentations on Project 2025. We did it all of last year in the lead up to the election, and we have done it since then, kind of showing how Project 2025 has um, become, um, part of the administration.
And so I kept this quote from our original presentation, and it says the playbook for authoritarianism, and that was Representative Jasmine Crockett. And those words could not be truer. We're seeing in real time how these policies in this administration has wreaked havoc and created hell in the name of protecting and eliminating crime and being the government of law and order, and being the absolute opposite of that, doing the absolute most to disrupt. So we'll go ahead and get started. And we have a list of topics. So, oh no, let's go back. So first of all, um, before we even get started, we want to know, like, how popular is this administration? Are these policies that are being implemented, how are they resonating with the American people and folks, everyday folks? Because there has been kind of like a divide, and we want to know, like, how is it playing out? And then you can see the rest of the topics. The ones with D are going to be me, and then the ones with M will be Michelle, and then we'll do some together. So if we look at these poll numbers, we see the topics that are really at the forefront of people's minds when they're thinking about the approval rating of Trump. A lot of folks are kind of torn on the immigration issue because that was supposed to be his top, flagship issue. And so I'd like to see what that looks like now, in terms of people seeing, the occupation and the violence and um, ICE agents, pepper bombing, men of clergy. And so that has not yet been measured, but we do have Epstein, Ukraine, Gaza, and the shutdown affecting those Trump numbers, and, creating that approval that we see. Michelle, did you want to add anything there?
Just the anonymity of it all. They're wearing masks. They are not wearing uniforms. Some of them are even disguising themselves as police officers, which is illegal. And yet they're being allowed to run roughshod over all of these people in various parts of the country, and it's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying.
And also, just another point that we'd like to make is that we know that these topics are hard to talk about, they're hard to listen to, and it gets pretty serious. So we do break up the presentation with a few levity breaks because a lot of the things that are happening are completely absurd. And if we don't find things to kind of like keep us going in terms of our humor, then it becomes even more challenging. So we know that you might not be able to watch this presentation all the way through the first time. Break it up if you need to. Watch it with a friend, so you don't have to do it alone, because we know that these are tough topics, but we also need to talk about them.
Absolutely. And so, on that note, Diana, do you want to cover the poll numbers?
Oh, I did. I did. I do want to say that it's down from last month, and he has a negative net approval rating. And this is from multiple polls, the New York Times, Pew Research Center, Marist College, Marquette, The Economist, Yahoo, and more. And to counter those negative numbers, Trump did put out a graphic of his own, which was very misleading, and that's on the next slide. So I did put that this is not the truth. And he put out that 57% of Americans approve of him. It's actually 47%. So this is a lie. This is not true.
So the current numbers in Congress, I went ahead and pulled these graphics offline from Wikipedia. These are the actual current numbers. So in the House, there are 435 members of the House, of course, at least voting members. 213 of them are currently Democrats, 219 of them are currently Republicans, and there are 3 vacancies, including, of course, Texas CD 18, which has been vacant since March, I believe. And the governor, in his infinite wisdom, decided to push the um, special election as long as he possibly could to keep that empty. And of course, Arizona CD 7, which I believe Diana will talk about in a minute, um, which is the one that the election already happened, like over a week ago, I think over 2 weeks ago, or almost 2 weeks ago, and the person still has not been sworn in because Mike Johnson is using the government shutdowns to refuse to swear her in so that um, she cannot be a co-signer on the um, document to release the Epstein files, because she would be literally the 218th, which is the last one needed to officially release the Epstein files. And then in the Senate, there are 100 members of the Senate, 2 per state. 45 are Democrats currently, 53 are Republicans currently, 2 independents, both of whom caucus with the Democrats. So it's basically a 47-53 split on that.
So there were some interesting numbers about the number of Latino voters and polling and what that looked like in Texas. So we're going to show a video in just a second, but I do want to stress the fact that this is not a guarantee for a swing to Democrats, because it might not necessarily be that party loyalty. It's more about issues. And I feel like the top concern is job and economic policies. But I would also add that immigration policies, I'm sure, are playing a role in some of these numbers. And again, I would like to see, since some of those actions have ramped up, what do the numbers look like now? So, the Republicans made some gains in the Rio Grande Valley, but I'm wondering if they're going to be able to sustain those, especially since they have a dynamic candidate who's very popular, singer and entertainer, who's now jumping in the race down there, and that might shift some of the momentum. So let's go ahead and watch this video. It's only like a minute and a half, where they explain the numbers and how like the results of some of this polling. Oh, what happened? Is it allowing you to do it? Oh, there it is. Okay. Oh, your sound's off, Michelle. Maybe that's why.
Is
Let's
this
try
the
it
video?
again.
Because I didn't know there was a video here, or I would have done it differently. Is this the video?
Yes, this is the video.
Okay. All right. Let me. Um,
I'm sorry about that.
it's okay.
Technical difficulties. We do it all the time in the classroom, so just hang tight. This was on CNN recently and maybe about a month ago. Oh yeah, September 18th. Um, and so they're explaining the polling and believe it or not, well, I'm sure you believe it. There was a huge swell for Trump in the 2024 election, but polling after that has shown something different. So we're still working on getting that up.
I didn't realize it wasn't playing. It's playing on my side, so I can't see what's on your screen. So what is on your screen?
Right now it's black.
Okay.
Okay, now it's playing, but I can't hear it.
All right. So I need to stop sharing and share this screen. Is it playing?
It's not playing. Okay, we're gonna move on. Sorry about that. We will make sure that we have the link to share that. But there's a jump of like 32 points in the negative against Trump after, but I really want you to be able to access all the information that this correspondent shares about those polling results. So we'll make sure that you get that link in the comments or somewhere, somehow. Okay. Alrighty. So with the redistricting sham, we have to consider whether or not the Republicans overestimated their hold on some of those red districts. So now instead of being dark red, they're lighter red. And then if you see the numbers shifting with Latino communities, then that could actually be a work against them. And not to say that, well, I also want to add that Latino voters are not just in Texas. So these communities are all over the United States. And so we need to also keep in mind that that can shift not just here, but it can shift the electoral balance else all over the United States. So that's my last point on that. Okay, so this is not actually a picture of John, an actual, this is manipulated to be a mashup between John Bolton and Michael Bolton. And I put this here because he was investigated and had like a raid at his house. And I got mad because I actually felt bad for John Bolton because he's kind of the worst. But anyone who has crossed Trump is now in the crosshairs. And so anyway, I just put this in because this is my favorite non-picture of John Bolton. Okay, so we are in the middle of a government shutdown, and right now, 47 percent of Dem voters support the shutdown, that we need to stand on principle. And like Michelle mentioned, is this one excuse to keep the shutdown going is to avoid swearing in Congresswoman-elect Adelita Guijalva of Arizona. And I feel like I'm not going to put anything past the Republicans at this point. They're playing dirty and they're doing everything they can to obstruct and delay and destroy our infrastructure. And so Dems have, the regular, common Dem um, folks have not been satisfied with a lot of the responses because, and I'd like to hear your take on this, Michelle, how we've been wanting more action. We've been wanting something more more strategy, something more active to deal with what's been happening, more than a strongly worded email. So I would love to hear your take on this, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that if I got one more strongly worded email from Chuck Schumer, my head was going to explode. It's to me, it's no different than thoughts and prayers whenever a shooting happens. How what is that going to fix? There is nothing that is going to fix, and we need to fix things. Like, people are suffering. People are about to lose their health care. A lot of people are about to lose their health care, and if Dems, elected Dems, care as much as those of us on the ground, those of us, block walking and doing the work to get them elected, then they would do more than, the Dem version of thoughts and prayers, because it is completely unacceptable to me.
I agree. And so they've used this shutdown, and Russell I'm not sure how you say his name. It's
It's actually, oddly enough, pronounced vote.
Vote. Oh, he announced some funding cuts for projects that were already earmarked and approved by Congress, which is against checks and balances. Okay, it's just a usurping of power. But Russell Vogt was actually one of the architects of Project 2025, and his whole goal was to cut positions, cut, like streamline government in a way that doesn't make it recognizable or serviceable to the regular American community. And I want to stress that this is an abuse of power because they're not supposed to use these shutdowns and as a time to um, cut jobs and um, manipulate government agencies to suit their interests. Okay. In, for example, $1.2 billion for a hydrogen energy project was cut in California, and a lot of funding was cut for blue states, states that went for Harris. And it's not our imagination that he is cutting them specifically in blue states. He says it. He says what he's doing. And that is so, it's just gross because we're not accustomed to people using their power for retribution, right? And furthermore, we don't know where this money is going to shift to. Like, there's no explanation, so we need transparency, and we're not going to get it under these current circumstances. But they're blaming the Democrats for the shutdown on all agency websites. If you go and pull up the Department of Education, it'll blame the Democrats for the shutdown when the shutdown is in fact being supported by Democrats so they can protect medical care access for Americans and keep those ACA subsidies. So I put down that Representative Grothman from Wisconsin says either 100,000 or 200,000 jobs can be cut because they're not doing much anyway. And it just showed a complete ignorance and disrespect for the jobs that and the support that we count on as a country. And so far we've been kind of muddling on, but we're going to get to a point to where our lives are severely affected when the IRS is non-functional, when TSA is non-functional because we don't have enough staff. And it's it's shameful that these people are just allowed to propagate these lies and say that we don't need this and it doesn't matter when it really does matter. And these are people's livelihoods. And who's carrying the brunt of this is Black women, with 300,000 jobs lost by Black women, and they're being targeted. And I don't think it's an accident. Okay, I'm done. I got
Um,
hot.
I You would be great. You would not be my friend if you did not. One thing I do want to point out is the Federal Employee Union supported the shutdown. That is unusual. I'll just say that is unusual. I also, as a government teacher who has read the Constitution and teaches the Constitution, I have to say that the power of the purse is with Congress. That's the way the Constitution was written, and it was very purposefully written that way. I read Madison's notes on the Constitutional Convention, and there was a lot of argument, but everyone, or most people, wanted to keep the power of the money with the body that is closest to the people, and that is with the House of Representatives. So the president single-handedly canceling these big programs that Congress approved is, I don't understand how it would be upheld in any court of law.
Right. And then didn't you also say something about him not wanting to pay back federal workers for the work that they've done during the shutdown? Didn't you say something
Yeah,
about that?
he's arguing right now that he won't pay the various employees, both the ones who are furloughed and the ones who are being required to work, like TSA and air traffic controllers. He's saying that he won't pay them. Congress is also refusing to come back into session to pass a bill to continue paying the military. There are people in the military. I heard one woman who is a Republican on a call-in show. I saw a clip that she has two children who depend on medication to live, and her husband's in the military. And if he does not get paid, then her children could die. And I just don't understand how you could refuse to pay TSA, the air traffic controllers, who already have the most stressful job in America, I would guess, or one of them,
Well,
and
even
our
more so
military.
now, right?
Yes, yeah, even more so now with the shortage and all of that. Absolutely.
So this is hurting real Americans. And remember, it's all for those tax cuts so billionaires can get more money in their pockets. And at what point is it enough when we are struggling to put food on the table and pay for insurance rates are going up and energy rates are going up, and cutting green projects doesn't help those costs go down, and on the contrary, it can cause more problems, especially when we're talking about I mean, we haven't even started talking about tariffs and mismanagement there, but it's adding yet another strain on the American family.
Absolutely.
Okay, do you want to explain these you want to explain these, Michelle?
I love that you amuse yourself so much with these. Sure. Stonekettle is an excellent account to follow on various social media, and this one was right on. Pete Hegseth is basically a meat Cybertruck. Yeah, that one just amused me to no end. And you and I were discussing before we went live about Kristi Noem asking to be let into that building so that she could use the bathroom, and them refusing to let her in, and just how happy that made us. Just every little inconvenience to them. Just keep it up. Keep it up.
And so this is a picture from Sinners, and it's vampires asking to be let in. And so I just thought that was hilarious because I mean, I know that there's been a lot of controversy about, wishing violence on people, but can we just wish some embarrassment and inconvenience and humiliation? Is that too much? I'm okay with it.
Same. All right, this is me. All right. So we know that Republicans in general are against public education. They Republican states are, pretty much always the bottom states in the country for education. Democratic states are almost always the top. Um, the most Democratic state in the union is Massachusetts. It's number one. One of the most Republican states in the union is Oklahoma. It is number 50. Um, that is not happenstance. That is plan. And so it's not surprising that much of Project 2025 was about the Department of Education and destroying it, and um, you know, getting rid of the various programs. But here are some of the fallout of what has happened. Um, so I say at the top, much of the job of the Department of Education for the entirety of its existence, which is since 1979, has been to make sure that education across the nation is relatively equitable, and that districts, schools, and states are not being discriminatory in as far as education and their students. Project 2025 specifically called for the elimination of the department and the elimination of civil rights protections. That has happened. Um, now they call DEI, racism, and so forth. June 2025, the Trump administration added Lindsey Burke as a deputy chief of staff for policy and programs in the Department of Education. She was the author of the Project 2025 Department of Education chapter. And then, of course, canceling loan forgiveness to millions has had a devastating impact on the economy. And we will see worse as we continue to get people that go into, or aren't able to make their payments, especially as the price of the cost of living gets higher, and people are unable to continue making their payments. It's going to bankrupt people. It's not going to be good. Specifically, Diana and I wanted to talk about PragerU. If you are unaware of PragerU, then I wish I lived in your life. PragerU is a right-wing organization whose mission is to, quote, promote American values through the creative use of digital media, technology, and edutainment. The current administration is trying to help them fill the hole left by the destruction of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the devastation that has wrought on PBS. They create content for as young as 3. So they constantly accuse us of trying to indoctrinate, but that's exactly what PragerU does. It indoctrinates. PragerU has partnered with the White House to create a series of AI-generated videos on the Founding Fathers and other aspects of history with a conservative bent and an aversion to facts. They have been criticized for advancing climate denial and for slavery apologism. They are really problematic, and the White House is basically trying to have them fill that space where people used to show PBS videos and other public publicly created history, science, etc., documentaries, and so forth. They're trying to get rid of all of that. Remember that Texas actually has a law prohibiting the use of Project, what is it, 1619 Project materials in class. I'm a history and government teacher. I'm not allowed to use any of that. My textbook does have a little bit of Project 2025 or Project 1619 Project material in it, and I keep it in there. It's an online textbook. But for the most part, we're unable to use that. But they want to push things like this and bluebonnet curriculum, and there's a lot of Christian nationalism trying to infiltrate our classrooms and indoctrinate. Where, what do they say? Every accusation is a confession. That is definitely the case here. And back to Diana.
Can we go back for just 1 second? Because I want to add something about American exceptionalism. So this whole idea that America has been some, I guess, like blessed by God to have this destiny, right? And that we're above reproach. And honestly, that's gaslighting to the nth degree because it's invalidating the experiences of those who have been persecuted, who have been marginalized, who have been vulnerable under policies that have been harmful. And the true way for us to come to terms and heal from that past is to talk about it, acknowledge it, learn from it, and grow. When you know better, you do better. And they're trying to sanitize history because it serves them in their quest for domination and also just it's I find it very humiliating that they want to distract and disconnect from reality in how things really happen. So I just wanted to kind of pause there because you and I have both taught history, and we want to make sure that our students feel seen. And when we're presenting shit like this, that is not a reality or a true reflection of what has happened and the pain that has happened under different regimes and different under different administrations. It really does a disservice to not just our brown and black students, but all of our students because they don't see the truth.
I also want to point out this is state, but not and then not federal, but it's part of the same thing that the Texas State Board of Education last month um, voted to change and they currently have working groups working on um, new curriculum for different grade levels. And one of the people that they put on the board that does all that is a man who wrote a history book that was so full of lies that his publisher pulled from the shelves. And the Texas State Board of Education thinks it's perfectly fine for somebody like that to be creating curriculum that our students, that our teachers will have to teach to our students. Additionally, Diana mentioned exceptionalism, American exceptionalism, and one of the directions that the State Board of Education gave the working groups is that they need to add more ways to teach American exceptionalism all the way through, like from third grade, which is basically when we start teaching history, all the way through. And I just don't even know what to say to that as a history and government teacher.
Well, I know what to say is that when you have somebody excellent who is running for the State Board of Education, you support them. And I'm going to do a shameless plug for Michelle Palmer right now because she is running for State Board of Education position 6, as she has done for the last two elections. And when we're talking about people sitting at the table making these decisions, like in Cypher, when they're deciding which chapters to teach from a textbook. Oh, let's go ahead and take the section out about vaccines. Oh, let's go ahead and take the section out about the climate crisis. Those are decisions that are not accidental. And so there is an election in Cypher that we're going to touch on later, and those decisions were actually made by somebody who is going to be on the ballot in November.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. This is why I run, right? It is not easy to run for a position like State Board of Education. There are only 15 positions, which means in Texas, with a population of over 30 million, each of those positions covers over 2 million people, which is a huge district. They are the largest single member districts in the state of Texas that aren't statewide. And I would not be doing it if I did not feel like I was under attack and like my students' futures was under attack.
Okay, listen, we're teachers and we're sharing this information, but that doesn't mean that we're detached from this information because we know that every one of these facts is connected to harming actual people in the community, and I will not stand for it, and neither will Michelle. So if we shed a tear here and there out of anger and frustration, please know that this is our authentic self, and we really we're here because we give a shit, okay? So let's switch gears to loyalty tests and um Trump as a narcissist, lowercase n, is really driven by his ego, and those who stand against him need to be punished. And he does believe in retribution. So judges who rule against him or his policies either get targeted one way or another. If you recall, over the weekend, there was a fire at Judge Diane Goodstein's home in South Carolina, and her children and grandchildren were in that house and had to jump, and her husband sustained some injuries. So this is not without harm to people. Elected officials who counter him, and that would be like the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago. He is threatening to arrest them. The ICE agents arrested the mayor of New Jersey city. I can't remember which one it was, if it was Princeton or another one. I can't remember. And so people are sidling up to Trump because they either want his administration to rule a certain way. So if they want to curry favor, like Apple, Tim Cook agreed to take down the Ice Block app at the behest of the administration. And legal firms who represented parties against Trump, they have been targeted in different ways. And so he's using the power of the government to either support his allies or those who suck up to him, or punish those who dare stand up to him. So entire cities and states who did not have a Trump majority in the 2024 election, you see that in Portland. You see it. Well, I'm not sure how Memphis voted, if they voted blue. I mean, I'm gonna assume that maybe they did, but then Chicago, um, we're seeing direct action, and LA, direct action in those cities, that seems, it's hard to believe. We have military occupation in American cities. And excuse my French, I'm so fucking proud of Chicago for showing up and for protecting their community as they need to against these thugs, against Gestapo 2.0. And absolutely, Christy Nome, you cannot use a restroom in this restaurant. You cannot use a restroom in this city hall or that facility. No, you don't, because you're not doing things to protect, you're terrorizing communities. So again, he will punish world leaders who stand against MAGA extremism. Look at how he treated Zelensky, demanding fealty right there in the White House during a press conference, saying, "Well, did you even say thank you?" I mean, I can't with this guy. And then any experts who expose his, did I cut it off? Did I not finish? Expose his lies. So that's like people from um like Letitia James, James Comey, librarians, people who work for the CDC, museum directors who oppose him trying to change some of the displays in the exhibits to suit his Christian nationalism, American exceptionalism mindset. Any of those folks are in the crosshairs. And I hate to say it that way, but it's also true that we have seen an escalation. And so these loyalty tests, they start with lawsuits, and that does provide a chilling effect to others who might oppose him. But also it comes with a threat of real violence. And that's important to highlight. This is not without harm. Okay. So this quote was from Project 2025. Eric Hubick, I think he was either one of the authors or connected to Project 2025. And their thought is we need to break down before we can build up. And so these loyalty tests serve as a way to clear the path for them to bring their people in. And so if you're loyal to him and not the Constitution, you're his enemy. So these career employees, these federal workers, and we talked about this in Project 2025, they planned to purge all of these people, right? We talked about how devastating that was going to be in the name of science. How can we trust any data coming from the government if it's not coming from people who are dedicated to their craft? They're dedicated to promoting this administration, and that could mean skewing the facts and distorting the truth to suit their purposes. So that's really dangerous when it comes to the climate crisis, when it comes to economic forecasts. And that's why it's so important to keep Lisa Cook in her position, because if they supplant her and put someone else in who can be malleable and not dedicated to their job, and instead want to support what Trump says, and he can manipulate the market and he's already making money out the wazoo, because he has not divested his interest. In fact, he has taken every opportunity to grift all along the way.
Yes, the two cryptocurrencies that the Trump family created is literally a way for foreign governments to bribe him. And it's been shown that several foreign governments have bought millions of dollars in those two cryptocurrencies.
Isn't that just gross?
Very.
I mean, it's just so gross. Like, it shows his character. And people say, oh, he's such a businessman, but no, he is a charlatan, a charlatan who doesn't care who he hurts, and in fact revels in the harm. And a lot of that goes to Stephen Miller. Don't even get me started on that little dude. So we need to be very clear about the fact that these loyalty tests serve a purpose. And despite us not supporting those policies, we still have a voice and we still have a right to speak our mind and to dissent. To dissent is the primary American right. And once we cede that, it's all over.
Do not obey in advance. I will continue saying that until this nightmare is over. You cannot give way to what he wants before he's even asked. You have to force him and this administration to put the full weight of the administration into it. Because, I mean, if you have not read On Tyranny by, I think it's Timothy Snyder, you need to, because it will show you how to survive what is happening right now and how to help our country survive.
And I will add that, us living in Texas, we're in the hot seat because Trump is getting full cooperation from Go Along Greg, and he's like offering all of these things. And so I feel like we are kind of carrying the brunt of it, especially being Harris County. We have a target on us specifically, and that's why Greg Abbott came here on October 1st to announce the violent crime task force to swarm neighborhoods and put an end so Houstonians could just feel safe walking down the street. I I don't see how those two statements actually match when we're talking about which neighborhoods are going to be swarmed. And I fear for my families, I fear for their communities, and I fear us looking the other way and just accepting this as normal.
And our
It's
city
not
government
normal.
looking the
Yeah,
other way.
yeah. Exactly. So this is a chance for us to push for them to not be loyal in advance, don't obey, and if they are opening the door, rolling out the red carpet for either Trump or his minions, what does that say about them?
Um, After you did your loyalty test slides, I wanted to make sure that people remember that Pam Bondi, in particular, remembers that although President Nixon never paid for his crimes as president, his Attorney General John Mitchell went to prison for 19 months. It would have been longer, but he got out for like his bad health because he was, older. So she wouldn't necessarily get that. And several of Trump's attorneys have been indicted, and several have been disbarred for their actions in protecting him. And I really think she needs to think about that and not just be a loyal mouthpiece for him. That's not the job of the Attorney General. The Attorney General is not the president's attorney. And we need to scream that from the rooftops for eternity. All right. So, the Department of Defense meeting that was held recently, um, a lot of what was said during that, not everything, but a lot of it was stuff from Project 2025. So ending DEI initiatives within the military, saying that those in the military cannot have beards affects more people of color than white men. So is that going to mean that black men in particular who often grow beards because it's it's problematic for them to shave, um, their skin just doesn't, and their hair doesn't react well to it. Is it going to be a way to get more of them out of the military? Talking about in Project 2025, it talks about restricting service based on gender identity, and Hegseth's comment on quote men in dresses goes along with that one. He also said that everyone in the military should have to achieve 70% of male standard physical fitness twice a year, and that includes not only, the regular military, but also the admirals and generals. But it also means that women in the military would have to achieve the 70 percentile of male standard physical fitness twice a year. So it's a way, we assume, to get a lot of women out of the military as well. But if those generals and admirals cannot achieve that, a lot of those men have master's degrees and PhDs in various topics that help them be really good at their job. Are we really going to have the brain drain from our military just for physical fitness? It seems like ignorant. Um, And then Hegseth also told the generals and admirals in attendance to prepare for war. And then Trump told them at the same meeting to use dangerous cities as training grounds, which goes completely against the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act, which says that the military cannot be used against Americans or on American land for the most part. And then there was a YouGov poll about this meeting afterwards, and 59% of those who had quote heard a lot about the meeting disapproved of what was said, while 39% approved. And then some of the attendees, said things like it could have been an email. Of course, they said this anonymously because they're in the military, and many were unhappy with what was said. Understandable. It was ridiculous. Um, and on that note, here's another levity break. Um,
I do want to note the connection between that and the loyalty test, because again, this is a way to purge those who might be counter to, it's an excuse, right? To get those who might be opposed to Trump's policies and not be amenable just to taking orders, whether or not they're constitutional, right? So you have serious military folks who didn't have time and should not have been. Let's just talk about this, and this is the point that Noel made, that none of that should have been public, that they were all in the same space. It's a severe threat to national security to have all of this publicized and have it like it was some sort of Google retreat. It was ridiculous to see those serious people have to listen to a meat Cybertruck and a mad orange. Like it doesn't make any sense. It does not compute with the severity and the seriousness of their jobs in protecting our nation. And then also just the idea that we're shifting this department from the Department of Defense to Department of War. That in itself, along with the rhetoric that Trump has posted about Chicago and the shutdown, including a Grim Reaper, right, should be very alarming to folks. What the hell is he even trying to do? What is he trying to say about the military and what he sees its job and its role in our communities?
And while we're talking about that, um, there was a lot of publicity last year, I want to say, about the suicide rate among our National Guardsmen here in Texas when they were sent by our esteemed governor to defend, quote unquote, the border. I can't even imagine what's going through their heads when they are sent out to possibly attack Americans. If that was so trying on them, which is understandable, I can't even imagine what this is going to be like. On that note, we need a levity break. So here are some memes that I found. I watch a lot of Netflix. And so this one really made me laugh. Netflix, are you still watching me asleep at the wheel?
Wait, was that at the UN or something?
I don't even remember where this particular one is
It,
because he's
it's
been
happened
filmed.
several times, right?
Yes, it has. Several times. And then this other one, so on point, tax breaks for the rich and budget cuts for the rest of us. Republicans when cutting Social Security for seniors, and you see laughter. Republicans when cutting tax breaks for the rich, and you see crying. I believe this is Kyle Rittenhouse during his trial in the second one, and while goofing around with rich people, I'm sure, on the first one.
Blech.
Indeed.
Okay, so we had a conversation about this and we're going to do this one together, but honestly, this is just a snippet of the general shit show that we've seen with this administration. Remember, it's been 262 days of hell, and they have tried to destroy as much as possible within that time period. So, I would love to hear your explanation of tariffs, Michelle, because I'm sure that when you explain this to your students, their heads just explode.
So when I teach history, we talk about tariffs several times in U.S. history, particularly when we're talking about the 1920s and the lead up to the Great Depression. Because a lot of people think of, the stock market crash as the cause of the Great Depression, and it really wasn't. It was the inciting event, sort of like Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination was the inciting event, but not really the cause of World War One. And so, one of the major causes of the Great Depression was the absolute ceasing of international trade because of what's called the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. And the Smoot-Hawley tariffs were just these really high tariffs. So after World War I ends, a bunch of countries need money. And so they're like, well, we don't want to tax our own people, so tariff. And so they create all these tariffs. And what that does, and the U.S. does the same, that was the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, was the U.S. doing the same. And especially because the 1920s economic system in the United States was like a roller coaster. It was like up and down, up and down, up and down. And so, we create these tariffs, and these tariffs cause international trade to stop. And I always talk to my students, because I also teach economics, about how money has power because it's moving. If it stops moving, it loses power. So one of the other things tariffs, bad. Tariffs throughout American history have caused problems. Every time we have tried tariffs as a revenue for an extended period of time, it has destroyed some part of the economy. This is known. Like most economists will tell you, tariffs bad. It's the reason we are part of so many different trade treaties to lower tariffs. Like NAFTA was, in the 90s and early 2000s. It's since become, I don't even remember what, but CMA or something like that treaty. And we had one. We tried to have one with Asia, and so forth. So trade treaties lowering tariffs help the economies of a lot of different, of basically all the countries involved. Do they cause other problems? Yes. You need to write solves for the other problems, like NAFTA was problematic because a lot of manufacturing jobs left the country, right, for Mexico. Mm-hmm. You need to create solutions to those problems. Tariffs are not the answer.
So can we talk about the soybean farmers, because they have been hit hard, right?
And what kills me is this happened under the first Trump administration. The first Trump administration put a tariff on China. China responded by tariff on us and by canceling soybean orders. And then the government had to bail out the soybean farmers. I feel like I'm living in a loop. The exact same thing happened under the first Trump administration.
So China ended up buying soybeans from Argentina, is that right?
In this case, Argentina. And so now the soybean farmers are furious because we just gave, what was it, $20 million or something like that? Maybe it was 20 billion, I don't even know, to Argentina. On top of the fact that they stole $30 billion worth of soybean sales from our farmers.
But again, people would say, well, that's the cost of doing business in capitalist society. But the problem is that if Trump is putting his finger on the scale of how this is supposed to work, and trying to mislead the American public by saying that the tariffs will be paid by the original country, when that's not the case, they're always going to try to pass off those costs to the consumer. So items are more expensive now, and we're losing. And when you said money has power when it moves, and so we're losing that momentum, and it's slowing down our economy, which is going to end up causing more problems in the job market in general for different folks. And so it's going to have a huge effect on working families.
Absolutely. The cost of things is going up. The availability of things things are getting scarce. There are numerous countries that have ceased mailing things to the United States. I don't have it on that slide. It's on this second slide. Getting rid of the de minimis exemptions to tariffs, which allowed mail under $800 to be brought in with no tariff. There's first two problems. There's not enough staff to handle the uptick in duties that need to be paid, so things are sitting in warehouses for we don't know how long.
Wild.
And then, in addition, 1.4 billion packages entered the U.S. under de minimis in 2024, And a lot of that was stuff from Shine or Sheen or however you pronounce it
Yeah.
and Temu. And so people are still ordering from those, and their packages are not coming in
Oh,
because they
man.
have to pay a
Yeah.
tariff to get their package out of the customs warehouse.
Right.
Because, of course, customs is under ICE,
Yeah.
Immigration and Customs
Right.
Enforcement, and they haven't added new customs staff. They've only added new immigration staff.
Correct. And so let's go back to that other slide if we're talking about Doge and the cutting of federal agencies and services to the American public. So they did that, not really realizing that some of the folks were actually essential. I mean, I would argue that, there can always be a streamlining of processes, but that doesn't go with cutting giant swaths of folks who depend on, the government for their livelihood, because so that causes a problem, but also just shifting how we perceive the government in general. So some of these folks did have to be hired back and they got back pay, which is ridiculous because they didn't it just doesn't make sense. So, when we're talking about those diversion of funds, right? Then those funds, a lot of FEMA's funds, um, and that is part of NOAA, I think, um, or they're related. Then we're talking about those funds going to ICE, so they and Homeland Security, so they have bolstered their budget because they ran out of their original funds, right? But it's also about controlling the science and the information that comes out from the government, just like we said in Project 2025. They want to control the narrative. And I don't see much daylight between Mike Miles and HISD trying to hire his own media team so he doesn't have to cooperate with the press because he wants to control the narrative, right? So it's all part of the same strategy of creating that propaganda and being able to control the information that goes out to the public, which is super dangerous.
Yeah,
Um,
they are not super worried about your First Amendment rights, right? They're worried about some other things, maybe, but not your First Amendment rights. Freedom of the press, freedom of speech. They don't care about those things. The founders put them first because they were the most important. Without them, we lose everything else. And people need to understand that. It's why you do not comply in advance. Because if you give up your right to free speech, your right to freedom of the press, your right to assemble, your right to protest and petition the government, then you give up everything else.
Right. And I was just going to add that in Portland, they were saying, well, yeah, you can protest, but you have to be in the protest zone. No, 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 no. No, no, no. That's not how this is supposed to work. You're supposed to be able to peacefully assemble. And whether it's in front of an ICE facility and it's inconvenient or something you don't want to look at is immaterial. Okay, so firing members of independent agencies, the FTC, NLRB, CP, what is the CPSC? What is that? Oh,
Consumer
consumer.
protection.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So again, if you're an expert and you're gonna dare say something, or you could potentially say something that would be counter to the narrative that they want to put forth, then okay, next. Go ahead with Signalgate.
I mean, I think that's enough said, right? And we're talking about general ineptitude. I mean, he doesn't even like know the rules. He's using Signal to have conversations with people that should not be a part of that conversation. And I don't even mean the journalist. I mean his brother-in-law, right? Nobody. This isn't. This was about war. This is a need to know situation. It. I just the absolute ineptitude. Just I don't even understand. Like how is somebody that ignorant of the rules and combative about it and not even stopping. Like it was shown that he did it again afterwards, right?
But DEI is the problem.
Yes.
DEI leads to mediocrity, right?
Oh, well, obviously. Not the fact that Trump's first term hired every person that was even semi capable to do various jobs, and now nobody will work for him that's semi capable. So we get um, just a plethora
The
of,
duds.
yeah, yeah, because that's all that will work for him.
Okay, so Abrego Garcia. Oh shit.
Mm.
I'm just gonna say that talking about ICE, talking about people in detention centers is heart wrenching because we're talking about people who are away from their families, who are being placed in very dangerous situations. We've heard of folks who have not made it home. There are people in Florida, I believe 1,200 folks who were in the detention center dubbed as Alligator Alcatraz, who are nowhere to be found. And where's the accountability, right? So Abrego Garcia, he was detained, he was deported. They're trying to send him to Uganda. They had him, I think they maybe had him in El Salvador and then brought him back, and then he was reunited with his family, and they want to make fetch happen when it comes to his case. They cannot stand the idea that they would be proven wrong. So they're trying to throw everything at the book, and it's a deliberate case of people being denied their due process. And if he loses his due process, that means it's not safe for anybody. And we cannot relinquish that or the First Amendment. Those rights are super critical when it comes to dealing with authoritarianism.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't understand is if he doesn't have due process as an immigrant, none of us have due process.
Mhm.
Because due process is the process through which you prove that you have the right to live here. If they can arrest him and deport him without any kind of um, uh, judge being in the process, then they can do that with anybody. It's just that simple. And a lot of Trump supporters just can't seem to understand that if one person doesn't have due process, none of us have due process.
That's correct. And that's why the Constitution protects every single person in the United States in their jurisdiction. Um, Also, for those who don't know, that also includes Puerto Rico. Um, okay, so we probably should move on, but let's just go ahead and say that grants have been canceled, including ones for Alzheimer's, children's cancer, and we're losing momentum on being the cutting edge as a scientific force because of those monies being lost. And what a shame. Um, what a shame that is,
There,
and it's
there,
needless.
there are scientists who have had to destroy decades of research because, and they had to kill like their research animals, their mice, and those are things that can never be gotten back. And that's what people don't understand. Canceling it and then them getting the grant money back when we have a new president, that's not the way it works. We are going to be decades behind in a lot of different scientific research when, if we get our country back. And that's also why you hear a lot of like every, like not every, the top people on authoritarianism, like the top professors, all left the country. All of them. They all moved to other countries to teach because they see the writing on the wall. And a lot of scientists are the same. They are leaving the country, and other countries are saying, "Here, I will give you $5 million to come to, come do your research in our country."
It's embarrassing. It's
It's incredibly
embarrassing.
embarrassing.
As a person with intellect who values data and science and rational thought, instead of this cult-like devotion to one person and their values and Christian nationalism. I'm sickened by it. And it makes me angry that people have been so easily influenced by it and they want to cooperate. And so that makes me even more stubborn to stay by true to what I know is important for our families, our communities, and our neighborhoods, what we deserve. And I'm just simply not accepting their version. I'm not going to accept the premise of their question.
Exactly. And I want to talk to Republican women for a second. Not that they'll be watching this, but I need them to understand that this is how Gilead starts, right? I have not watched the TV show. It is too much for me. But the book is it's one of my favorite books of all time. Before, all the big book banning stuff, I used to give students copies of it all the time. Um, and this is how it starts. The anti-science stuff, and now all this stuff, we aren't even talking about this, but all this stuff about the low birth rate, and we want to you know you know we want white people to have more kids. This is how it starts.
Yeah, and if we did that, we would be on here for 3 hours. So we're trying
Yes.
to make it a bite size, right? But
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's see, next slide. Oh, this is you.
Okay, so I saw something on MSNBC today where they were talking about Pam Bondi and this. Well, it goes with general ineptitude because Trump thought he was sending a direct message to the Attorney General Pam Bondi. And it is you can draw a straight line between this statement, this post that was accidentally made and made fun of by late night talk show hosts because they didn't understand the context, and his indictment of Letitia James today. It's the targeting. And again, if you don't pass the loyalty test and you're my enemy, I'm going to punish you. And thank goodness for these folks who have the backbone to say, like John Oliver would say, to quote John Oliver, fuck you, make me. I'm going to do my job. You're not going to stop me. I'm Lisa Cook. I know what I'm doing. You can't force me to walk away or to kowtow to you. And Pam Bondi is an instrument of his terror attack on folks and trying to have a chilling effect on opposition, right? So here we have a whole list of what he's trying to accomplish. And is there an enemies list? Um, I think there is. And we need to be counting the days until we have some sort of consequence legally that will come to these folks because of what they've done in the name of their devotion to this individual.
So I found this quote. I every year I make my U.S. history students read the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass in the lead up to teaching the Civil War. And this quote is actually from a letter that he wrote to an abolitionist. But when we started talking about tyranny, or when I started thinking about tyranny, I thought about this quote. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. In other words, it's up to us. That's it. It's up to us. We have to stop this. Um, he wants to cancel the 2026 midterms and the 2028 election. If he tries to cancel the 2028 election, saying that times are too complicated, they didn't cancel it during the Civil War. They didn't cancel it during World War I or World War II. We cannot allow him to use anything as an excuse to try to cancel the 2028 election, because we know he's going to try.
And on that note, I think he's itching to call the Insurrection Act, right? And so when we see the tension building between Illinois and Texas, and shame on Go Along Greg for sending National Guard troops to Chicago when we still have people missing from the floods in the summer, from when we are in the middle still of hurricane season and could possibly need that support. And we're having those folks, those um, people from Texas going and invading another city at the behest of a tyrant. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. And it actually, there's a judge who ruled that that was illegal. And I think there was even a second ruling. So people are fighting back and these lawsuits are making headway, but is it going to be fast enough to stop what's actually happening on the ground is the question.
Absolutely. All right, levity break. Your turn.
Okay, for Levity Break, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the show Portlandia, but Antifa has had a big week. Ken Paxton did announce that he was going to infiltrate Antifa cells here in Texas, and so Christy Nome found the leaders of the Antifa, and if that's Fred and Carrie Brownstein, and then we have PBS fighting for their lives, and I just love the fact that there's this is peak 2025 right now. We have PBS and Dolly, and we could not love them more, right?
Absolutely. How can you not love either one? It's un-American.
Okay, we're ready for the next one. We're getting close, y'all. We're getting close. This is the last big topic, CDC and RFK, aka brainworm. Let's for real, like we could not make this stuff up, y'all. And this is the world that we're living in right now. So let's talk about the ridiculousness of RFK. First of all, I feel pretty upset about the fact that the CDC shooting has not had more attraction and more publicity, but there was a deadly shooting. And again, that's political violence with this rhetoric and this pumping up of them as the enemy, right? And people who are speaking up are being punished. Again, same pattern, right? And then this is the part that really concerns me as an educator when we have kids who may not have access to vaccines and changing the policies so that health insurance may not cover vaccines if it's not required for school setting. And what does that do to herd immunity? It decimates it. And it actually is a huge threat on public safety and a very regressive decision. Did you want to talk about the acetaminophen?
I can, but I want to first comment on the vaccines. I follow a couple of various doctors on various social media, and one of them was talking about today about, or maybe it was yesterday, about how because of the measles vaccine being dropped by so many people and the amount of measles contamination or whatever that we have, that the United States, Canada, and Mexico um, are soon to basically measles is almost going to become endemic um, because they have low percentages of um, measles vaccination, and really it's more about because so many people are getting it that they're passing it to people that can't get the vaccine and things like that. Like they have various health issues that require that they can't get it.
But they're also manipulating the numbers and not underreporting what's actually happening. So that's the part that's scary, is because we used to be able to rely on the government to at least in more modern times be truthful about facts and figures to the best of their ability. But now if we see it doesn't suit their narrative, then it's a problem, right? And it creates a danger for everyone.
Yeah, one of the things that you and I talked about when we were first presenting Project 2025 is the fact that they want to stop collecting data on things like this, things that they know the data is not going to show what they want, but they want to start collecting data on things like abortion, fertility, things like that.
Women's menstrual cycles,
Yeah, that
right?
kind of stuff.
Or
Yeah,
folks' menstrual cycles. Like
yeah.
we can't, um, that's a huge invasion. And so there have been conversations about not using those trackers and being very vigilant about what information you have and submit. And I understand, that that creates a divide between folks and their medical providers. But I also understand the fear behind it, when we're um possibly, we're still having attacks on the right of gay marriage and access to um birth control, right? And mifepristone. That's one thing that is, I think that's on the next slide. We can go ahead and transition. Mifepristone was a generic was recently approved. Even though that we had the shutdown, they did it right the last day. I think September 30th, they approved it, and it counters the thought that mifepristone is dangerous when you approve a generic. So it doesn't align with what the image that they want to purport in here, especially in Texas, right? There's a huge push by these guys who want to control fertility.
Hmm. I'm going to go back and talk about acetaminophen real quick, and then I'll come back and talk about the CDC. So, RFK and Trump coming out and saying that acetaminophen is the cause of autism with zero proof. There's not a single study that shows causation. There are some studies that show correlation, but since acetaminophen is the only pain reliever and fever reducer that's allowed for pregnant women, safe for pregnant women, of course there's going to be correlation, right? And then I think it was today or maybe yesterday, RFK also said that early circumcision is causing babies to be given acetaminophen for pain and therefore causing autism. So, and then I really think that the president himself, I can't believe it hasn't happened yet, but Tylenol is going to sue because he can't say acetaminophen, so he just says Tylenol. And I can't imagine that Tylenol is going to let that go. It's
I
going
know
to
they've been strangely
affect
quiet. They've been
them.
strangely quiet, which makes me wonder, like, is there some benefit for them to be quiet? So I have my little tin foil hat to
Right.
see, like, because I did expect a lawsuit quite some
Well,
time ago.
they put out a statement.
Okay.
Like
Oh, that's right, they did.
they did like a on social media. It was just a like physical, you know, statement. But
Mhm.
that's all they've done, and I think they're doing it because that's what their lawyers told them to do. So
Okay.
we'll see.
Well, okay. Time will tell. Time will tell.
Yeah. And then okay. Also on the positive side, CDC employees are cheering their fired and laid off colleagues as they leave with their belongings to show support. And we have a video of that here.
Oh, I guess we can't hear it, but they're cheering for all of their colleagues and doing like a clap out as they leave. And
Go
it
ahead.
shows the solidarity that these folks have and the devotion to the science, instead of, because they're career and serious folks who've dedicated their expertise to the government. And this is a moment of sadness to see that chapter close under such shameful circumstances.
Absolutely.
Okay, levity break. People are bigly mad at Big Bunny for being a Spanish speaking American citizen from Puerto Rico. For some reason, that's offensive. But he has done so much for the Puerto Rican economy, having those residency shows. And what a beautiful embrace of the Latino culture and the whole uh, diaspora of Latino culture, Afro Latina culture. I mean, the entire. it was just beautiful to see all of that in his show, and I cannot wait to see the halftime. I'm looking forward to it. Learn your Spanish, y'all. Learn your Spanish.
All right, I have what 4 months to learn Spanish before the show.
Yeah.
It might actually make me watch a Super Bowl, which is not something that I do.
Yep.
I don't even watch it for the commercials anymore because they're now on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
All
All
right,
right.
I have 5 minutes before the
Yes.
Starbucks
Yes.
closes.
Okay. All right. So, these are our parting thoughts here. So, this is from our first presentation. Um, and I'll let you read this, but it pretty much sums up everything that they've been trying to do to break us. And we're still here. We're still going to stand up, and we're still going to speak out. And I hope that you will join us in those efforts, whatever that takes. So that leads us, we need to have a coordinated strategy to save America and stop this coup before it's too late. And we can go to the next slide. So, what will you do to protect democracy, Michelle?
I mean, obviously, the No Kings protest is the next big nationwide protest. It's October 18th. There's definitely a location near you, no matter where you are watching this. And you need to attend one. If you're here in the Houston area, where Diana and I are every Tuesday, there is a protest at Senator John Cornyn's office on Memorial, every Tuesday from 11:30 to 1. Um, some amazing people have been doing it. It's been going on for years, and will continue going on until it is not needed anymore, which I sadly think will be a while.
And then we have, of course, HISD and Sci-Fair ISD races, as well as the Congressional 18 election in November. So reach out to your representatives, and that includes city officials, because when it comes to the safety of our communities and ICE infiltration, ICE raids, National Guard showing up in our communities, we need to hold them to account in our safety as well, and the protection of the First Amendment and due process.
And if you live in the city of Houston, there's also a city council special election happening. And even if you don't live in any of those areas, if you're in the state of Texas, there are 17 propositions, constitutional amendments on the ballot. And it's important that you know what they are, research what they are going into them, because the language is always cloudy. Um, and yeah.
We may come back and do a breakdown of those constitutional amendments. It does take a lot of time for us to prepare these presentations, but we want to do it because this is our inclination as educators to share this information in a way that's palatable for regular folks, because it's so important and critical for us to be aware and be knowledgeable. So let's look at Portland tonight. Very dangerous place. Look at it. I'm just so enamored by how they have shown up. We're trying to find pictures, but there was like a Victorian dressed woman having a tea party with ice kind of in the background. And I just loved it because it was so Portland. It was so creative. And they had, I think, another line of folks holding donuts at the end of fishing lines, trying to taunt the ICE, the National Guard or whoever. And I just felt like, okay, this is showing the ridiculousness of going into American cities. And I just feel like that's a gift, and we need to keep in a way of keeping humor, even though this is tragic. Michelle?
I think you said it all. I have got to get out of this Starbucks where they have closed.
So, thank you for joining us. We hope you got something out of this. And if you have questions, please feel free to make a comment. And thanks again. Good night.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye, Diane.